So with you, hopefully your parents' permission, you are 12th grader, and probably this is the last several class we are going to have together because you are going to college very soon, right? So you are doing AP English. I'm very proud to work with you on some of the most famous poem in the US history because you are doing AP English literature. We are moving to the poetry section. I'm very proud that we learned Hamlet the last 4 or 5 sessions because that's the hardest play ever. We have a very hard discussion each and every act. But right now, I'm very happy we move on from Shakespeare to modern poetry. And to me, the #1 most important modern poet, even more important than T.S. Eliot, because Pound discovered and developed T.S. Eliot and also the guy Robert Frost. So he discovered them and nurtured them, and he is even greater than they are. Only rarely American high school and college teach Ezra Pound, and if they don't do it, I take up the burden. Okay, I take up the burden. What forced me to learn about Pound because I discovered Ezra Pound's translation, The River Merchant's Wife, a letter by Li Bo. That's 李白。李白的诗《长干行》，中国的唐朝是诗歌的疯癫。The highest point of the Chinese poetry. And Ezra Pound don't know Chinese. He translated this poetry from Japanese. Okay, he's a good friend, was a visiting professor in Japan, and in Japan, they worship Tang poetry, and the literary tradition from the Tang Dynasty has been carried on in Japan from the ancient time to the modern age. So, Ezra Pound and his group of literary figures in the United States and London are using Chinese poetry, Japanese printing to enrich the Western culture. And most of the translation, I hate them because they cannot even transmute 1/10 of the beauty of Tang poetry to the Western audience. But this one is almost perfect. The language is so simple and so pure. So I'm recording this one in order to recruit your parents to teach you 李白的长干行 in Chinese. 妾发出覆额，折花门前戏。郎骑竹马来，绕床弄青梅。Very difficult to appreciate even in Chinese, not to say translated from Chinese to Japanese, from Japanese to English. Make sense? And what he did is translate English to English. Make the essence of a beauty pure. And how did he do it? I don't know. You're going to tell me, okay? And you're going to tell me which part convey the essence of beauty well, which part is not well. So we learn this together.
Merchant's Wife, a letter after Lipo by Ezra Pound.
So this is the facial expression of Ezra Pound. If you do nothing else, you can read face. This guy is deep thinking. He did all the philosophy of the world. He called himself a philosopher, economics. He developed his own economic theory, especially depression, especially the Great Depression. He lives through the Roaring 20s. We talk about American history, the Roaring 20s, right? and he predicted economic decline. And therefore, he moved to Europe. And then there's a whole long, complex story. He's a criticism of modern capitalism and finance people, Wall Street. Make himself into a legend and a target for attack, open to attack. So this guy is very philosophical and he's very political. But his pursuit of beauty in poetry is the purest. And this whole poetry, Li Bai's story, is about a love story. And it's very pure love story. Now, you're going to listen. Actually, YouTube may not allow me to use him too much, so you probably will read for me. Okay.
While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played at the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums.
So, Kendrick, why don't you read for me and ask me any question? I will interrupt and we'll appreciate together. Go ahead.
While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played at the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat, playing with blue plums. And we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people, without dislike or suspicion.
First person narration. This is a wife who is already middle-aged, maybe 20-something, but that time in China is already middle-aged, right? So maybe 30. Okay, right now is a young lady, but at that time is almost ancient. The wife is left to do business, and she, from a wife's point of view, remember when the two of them first met. That's when they were maybe 3 or 4 years old, 5-year-old. First person narration. Okay, go ahead. 14. At 14.
At 14, I married my lord, you. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the world, at the wall, called to 1,000 times. I never looked back.
So stop. 14 means 13 in the Western calendar, right? It's in the Chinese calendar, in China, Korea, Japan, and maybe Vietnam. Still, when the first day you were born, you're 1 year old. Okay. They account the time you are in the mom's belly. Okay. So it's in the current calendar, it would be 13 years old. So they marry early, and apparently it's arranged marriage, right? When you are 13-year-old, you know, you cannot fall in love and decide your own marriage. So it is arranged family, the negotiation between the two families. Therefore, she being bashful, lowered my head. Okay, she was bashful. She's not adjusting the first year, not adjusting from the young girl to a marriage housewife role very well. That's the historical background. So the progress of 13 and then 15. Go ahead.
At 15, I stopped scowling. I desire my dust to be mingled with yours forever and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout?
So lookout is a big stone, like a mountain. The women standing there looking at the river and looking to wish their husband come back. Let's look out. Let's look out. Okay. Because these are in the Yangtze River area, and Yangtze River by Li Bai. So I'm sending this poetry to you. So when you read, let me explain to you. I will explain. Okay. So that is a very easy poetry, but I'm sending this one to you. Most of the explanation I can find from the internet are horrible, but I did my research. I have the whole several thousand page biography and collection of Pound. Did I finish? Of course not. Okay, it's 1,000 pages, more than 1,000 pages. Yeah, but I read probably more than half of it. Where are we? Where are we? No. 15, not 16. So they married for 1.5 years or 2 years, and then what's going on? Go.
At 16, you departed. You went far into Kutuen by the river of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys make sorrowful noise overhead. You drag.
So this one is, the description, because in the Yangtze River area, it's very easy to travel from upstream to the downstream. But when you come back, it's very hard, right? Because the transportation is so hard, so the traffic between the two areas, when you do business, the traffic is very big. In the Yangtze River Valley area, the land got to be poor, right? So the people are forced to go out of their town to make their fortune. And there's a commercial tradition in that area. So the young men, when they grow to a certain age, they have to leave. But because they leave, they don't know whether they will survive. Make sense, Kendrick, at that time? So you have to have a wife, hopefully a baby. So if you die, you leave your family bloodline again at home. Make sense? So think about this young girl. Oh, she's only, when the husband left, she's only 15 years old, according to our age calendar. Go ahead. You drag your feet. Of course, the young husband don't want to leave. They have a similar age. They have a similar age because they grow up together. So the boy is only 15, 16 years old. Go ahead.
You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now, the moss has grown, the different mosses too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. If you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chuo Fusha.
Okay, let me read in Chinese, okay? Let me see my memory whether they feel me or not. You even if your Chinese are not going to understand that much, but think about the rhythm. I'm recall this in memory. 妾发初覆额，折花门前戏。郎骑竹马来，绕床弄青梅。红居长干里，两小无嫌猜。14为君妇，休言未曾开。低头向岸壁，千唤不一回。15时展眉，愿同尘与灰。长唇抱柱信，启上望夫台。That's it. Okay. 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 At the end, 早晚下38，欲将书报家。相逢不道远，直至长风沙。That's all I can remember. Okay, I'm going to send you some analysis. Okay, so by Ezra Pound. This one is the easiest poetry for Pound, but his appreciation of so-called Oriental culture is not an attitude of condensation. I mean, looking down upon you, oh, you little boys, you're okay. You also have a culture. No. This is the time when China was in misery, right? In a deep misery. The country is a broken pieces. Think about the 1930s, right? 1933, 1922. China is in chaos, warlord of fighting, people are famine, every year millions of people starving, right? So many Western missionaries are going to China to save Chinese babies, right? Let's donate $1. God will reward you. Stuff. But this guy is probably the most cultured American. He gave the Chinese culture a respect. That's as pure as this poetry. That's why I was drawn to study Pound. Before this poetry, I don't know anything about Ezra Pound, okay? Just because of this one poem, I start to read his hard poetry. And some of them are wonderful. Now I want you to read the first paragraph. That's it.
The River Merchant's Wife, a Letter, is a loose translation of another poem by the Chinese poet Li Bai. It was first published in Pound's Cathay, a 1915 collection of his works. Upon publication, several of the poems in this collection were controversial. Their form, style, and use of language were all new, something that Pound strived for throughout his career.
Listen. He's trying to using Japanese culture and Chinese culture to purify English language. That's what he did. And think about it, Kathy. What does this word mean? Kathy means 契丹. That is another word for China. That is the word came from Russia. This is another word for China. And he wrote, oh, beautiful. I'm so lucky. You are so lucky. I'm so lucky. 5 years ago, I studied each and every poetry in this audiobook. Cassie by Ezra Pound. And it's also have a wonderful voice. Of course, not many people are listening to this wonderful video. And there's only several hundred people. At least I contribute 50, at least. So I work in my garden. I'm just keep on listening to this one. And I got the book, the audiobook, and enjoyed it. I finished each and every poetry here. What this one is about, this is about from Shi Jing, from ancient Chinese poetry to the Tang Dynasty, all the way to the Tang Dynasty. All of them, probably most of them, through the Japanese language to English. Make sense? So randomly, let me choose one and let me explain to you what it's about. Because I know the original Chinese poetry, so I'm listening to Ezra Pound's translation. I'm amazed. Why amazed? Because it's improved my Chinese understanding about the situation. Because sometimes when you do the translation, there is a 3 or 4 meaning. And what is the real meaning? And I was still wondering. And he chose one because my appreciation of Ezra Pound and my respect to his knowledge, I'm thinking whether he makes sense or not. Make sense? No. So in the middle, mini, money, more, let me randomly choose one and let's think about it together. I'm so glad we ran into Ezra Pound today.
Where lay the dynastic house of the Go. The bright cloth and bright caps of Shin are now the base of old hills. The 3 mountains fall through the far heaven. The Isle of White Heron splits the 2 streams apart. Now the high clouds cover the sun. and I cannot see Choan afar, and I am sad. End of poem. This recording is...
So we only listen to part of the poetry, but it's very interesting. A lot of poetry in the Chinese Han Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty, and even before that, there's a long tradition of expressing sadness. That sadness is when the empire is in the at the height, right? And these artistic people are the upper class of the society. They are having good time, and they have a banquet. In the banquet, when they drink the wine, and the beautiful girls are singing for them, play pipa, and these people express their sadness, melancholy. But probably they express sadness and not sadness anymore. But a lot of them, they separate about their loved ones or their friends. So they express their longing to meet again. So next, finish one more.
Is in the public domain. Drake. The die horse neighs against the bleak wind of Etsu. The birds of Etsu have no love for N in the north. Emotion is born out of habit.
杜甫，唐诗杜甫，李白、杜甫、白居易三个人。The three poets, the most famous one, 李白. This is 杜甫. Hopefully I'm right.
Yesterday we went out of the wild goose gate. Today, from the dragon pen. Surprised, desert turmoil, sea sun. Flying snow bewilders the barbarian heaven. Lice swarms like ants over our accoutrements. Mind and spirit drive on the feathery banners. Hard fight gets no reward. Loyalty is hard to explain. Who will be sorry for General Rishogu, the swift-moving, whose white head is lost for this province?
So this is when the Tang Dynasty was having a lot of military conflicts with the western border and the northern border in the currently Xinjiang and Mongolia, right? So the general and the general friend are complaining about the good people are not getting the reward. Shouldn't I buy this? Yeah, I think I bought this book. I will buy it again. Okay, this is the description about this book collection, poetry collection, Ezra Pound. A collection of classical Chinese poetry translated English by the modernist poet. He's a modernist. Think about it, he's a modernist poet. His situation is almost like a Picasso. He changed American landscape, poetry landscape. Most of people, when I was in the classroom, they teach about, T.S. Eliot. I still love T.S. Eliot, but T.S. Eliot is his students. Without Ezra Pound, there is no T.S. Eliot, right? And he, based on the Ernest, he's a friend. This guy is he's a friend. Art history of Japanese art, professor of philosophy. They are all philosophy and economic history. Oh, these are the top people. Okay. So Pound don't have any knowledge of Chinese culture, but his best friend are in Tokyo and translate Li Bai's poetry, Tang poetry into Okay, why don't you read one paragraph background? Go ahead.
In 1909, Pound was living in London working as secretary to W.B. Yeats.
W.B. Yeats. Think about W. Yeats. He's another giant of Western literature, right? The number one dude in terms of poetry from Ireland. He's a son of Ireland, even though he's not, so-called patriots. Because these patriots can be so narrow-minded, and W.B. Yeats belong to the world, so the best people always gravitated towards each other. Didn't we talk about W.B. Yeats last year, or sometimes?
I think at some point we talked about.
Yeah, that was before this semester. That was at the end of last semester. We talked about W.B. Yeats. Okay, they all interested. Go ahead.
Interested in Asian art and literature, the two poets often visited the Asian exhibits at the British Museum. Pound had previously become acquainted with Lawrence Binyon, a curator of Asian art at the museum and author of Flight of the Dragons, an essay on the theory and practice of art in China and Japan. Binyon and Pound shared a view of Asian art, seeing in it a respect for tradition coupled with innovative ideas, which appealed to Pound's sense of modernity and his motto about art, to make it new. Soon after, Pound read Herbert Giles's A History of Modern Literature in 1901, from which he took inspiration to try his hand at translating Chinese poetry.
The translating of the Chinese poetry, I know how hard it is. It's almost impossible job. It's a mission impossible. Because I read so many translations, they are equally bad. No, they are unequally bad. They're all bad. They are all disgusting to my standard. But in terms of Pound, it's not perfect. Pound seeking perfection. He never get perfection. He never pretend he's perfect. But you forgive him because of his effort. And all your life's effort can never even catch even a small percentage fiction of what he did. Okay, life is short, art is forever. Life is short and art is forever. Now we talk about style. The most difficult part is not the story at all, it's the style. How to have the purity of the language from one language to the other. My personal bias is, I don't want to talk about my personal bias. It's Chinese more fit for poetry, and the English language is harder. It's a lot harder. English language, my bias is a language good for law and business. In terms of rhyming schemes, compared with tongue poetry, is pretty hard. That's why Pound is going back to the ancient Chinese style, and to not for the Chinese language, but to renew English language to make it new. Go ahead. One paragraph.
Pound worked on the poems in Cathay during the period he made a move from imagism to vorticism. Pound critic Jioming Qian calls The River Merchant's Wife a letter, The Jewel Stairs, Grievance, and The Exile's Letter, imagist and vorticist masterpieces. The opening poem, Song of the Boatman of Shu, shows the dominant themes of separation and loneliness, especially in the loneliness of the soldier. This is evident also in the Lament of the Frontier Guard, and perhaps suggestive of Pound's great distress.
Okay, now it's getting my interest because I'm sending you this poetry. That probably is the poetry you did, Song of the Bowman Shu. Let's see. Hopefully they have the Chinese translation. Okay, see the influence. Nevertheless, upon publication, the volume, how many people That is who's who.
Yes.
T.S. Eliot. Yes. Not familiar? Ford. Carlos William, of course. He's the greatest of remark on the nature of the poetry, their robustness, response. College friend William says of them, if there's an original verse, if these are original verse, then Pound was the greatest poet of the day. Make sense? If Pound wrote that, Pound was the greatest poet of the day. And these are the people who usually don't praise others, right? These are the very mean people because they are so good. They rarely say good things about their competitors, right? So if you really read his translation, you don't think it's ancient poetry. It is modern. It's a modern English. It is a modern because he made the English language anew. Yeah, so I'm sending you the whole Cassie poetry, and that is also a reminder of myself. I need to print this out or even buy this book. Even buy this book is all here. The great thing is, all the good education are self-education. All the greatest books are free. These expensive books, most of them, they charge a lot of money to my students, and especially the textbook. It doesn't worth our time. All the education are self-discovery. Now you are at the gate of college, right? You are moving from high school, 12th grader, and right now it's your time of free exploration. And all the real knowledge you have to discover yourself. Okay. So for example, you read one of these the river song, the beautiful toilet, the song of the bowman of Shu. So these old men, this one is the Zhou dynasty. This one is the Zhou dynasty poetry, which is you already learned about the AP world history, right? Zhou dynasty lasts for 800 years. That is what? Before Confucius, before Jesus for 1,000 years. Zhou dynasty lasts 800 years. Okay, and then the spring and autumn, and then the warring state, and then the Qing dynasty unification. So I want you to spend time to read some of them. And yeah, I was right, 4th century BC. 这是在中国是诗经. So the position in the Chinese culture, 诗300篇, 300 poetry that's collected by Confucius himself. Make sense? He collected and edited them together. So this is the masterpiece. And Ezra Pound did a great job unintentionally to improve the communication between two civilizations. Okay, I mean the best of the mind. So Ezra Pound definitely is the best of the mind, and his poetry can be pure beauty, and his poetry can be brutally powerful. Okay, let me teach you another one, and I gave you a quiz to say what this guy is talking about. In prison, he wrote this Yozora canto in prison. He was in isolation and he was in prison. And the prison always opened people's mind. Always. Some of the best people in the whole world, they got their education not only from books, not only from experience, but from prison. And that makes him even more mature. And this poetry is so powerful, so controversial, so brutal. Here is the challenge. Now you have time rather than for test, rather than for school, rather than for teacher, but this one is give you a challenge. Okay, it's give you a challenge. So understand this guy. It's worth your time.
Misunderstand usury and interest are not
His own voice, his old and shaky voice.
the same thing. Usury is a charge made for the use of money, regardless
of production.
Of production and often regardless even of the possibilities of production.
Even the possibility of production. This guy is a poet. I said he's a philosopher. He's also economist. But of course, the economic theory, the school won't teach his theory. Of course they won't. See the definition? The clarity of the language?
Often regardless even of the possibilities of production.
Money for money's sake. The money game have nothing to do with the production, even the possibility of production. Who care about the production? If I can print money and accumulate money, free. And what is the implication to the society? What's the implication for human existence? What's the implication for beauty? What's the implication for beauty? That's why the modern art can drive through the new area of beauty, but it also can go through the new area of ugly, pure ugliness. And who know it? Ezra Pound know it. Because whatever age he lived, he's the top brain. He have a top brain. Therefore, he have to suffer. He have to suffer, right? And his poetry is a description of his suffering.
With Uzura hath no man a house of good stone, each block cut smooth and well-fitting, that design might cover their face. With Uzura hath no man a painted paradise on his church wall, Arpes élu, or where virgin receiveth message, and halo projects from incision. With Uzura seeth no man Gonzaga his heirs and his concubines. No picture is made to endure, not to live with, but it is made to sell and sell quickly.
The classical art, the beauty of Western civilization are systematically destroyed by pure ugliness. And he knows the reason are not art. The reason is usury.
With Uzura, sin against nature.
Sin against nature. Look at these modern art. They are sin against nature. And Ezra Pound had to die because he exposed systematic hypocrisy. And
is thy bread evermore of stale rags? Is thy bread?
That is health and beauty and nutrition.
Bread dry as paper, no mountain wheat, no strong
No mountain
flour.
wheat, no strong flour. With usury, the line grows thick.
With Uzura the line grows thick. With Uzura is no clear demarcation. No man can find site for his dwelling. Stone cutter is kept from his stone. Weaver is kept from his loom. With Uzura, wool comes not to market. Sheep bringeth no gain with Uzora. Uzora's a murrain. Uzora plungeth the needle in the maid's hand and stoppeth the spinner's cunning. Pietro Lombardo came not by Uzora. Duccio came not by Uzora, nor Pier della Francesca. Zoan Bellin not by Uzora, nor was La Colunnia painted. Came not by Uzora.
Okay, it's a powerful poetry, and it takes a lot of effort to actually understand him. Okay, but he is not pretending. He's not trying to impress you. This one is in the world, in the chaos of 1939. Tell me what happened in 1931 in that world.
Yeah, this was 1939 was that was Germany's right as Germany was invading Poland, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was the start of World War II with
That's right.
Germany's invasion.
And he is explaining why the war started. Okay. Oh man, this Ezra Pound explaining to the world from Rome what he think is going on, why the war have to start. He know the war haven't started yet. The war is almost starting. And I give you this guy from Yale because school don't teach Pound anymore. But Yale have to. Why? Without him, you cannot escape this part of art history or intellectual, you call intellectual history of the West. Right? So even if Yale is still a brainwashing institution, right? But still they have to have their respectability. So
Pound.
I listened to this guy several times. He's not that impressive, but there's no good competition. There's no good competition. He's not that great. Okay, he's not great. It's better to read Pound yourself and research him because I think for his hardest poetry is the Panto. That is all these poetry is taking him a very long time to finish, and from the Great Depression to World War II, and then back into the United States, and he was in the asylum. So if today I didn't do anything but introduce you to this wonderful person and his contribution to the Western American literature, all the great minds are his protege, not racist for me. And he was persecuted. Go ahead.
Ezra Pound is generally considered the poet most responsible for defining and promoting a modernist aesthetic in poetry. In the early teens of the 20th century, he opened a seminal exchange of work and ideas between British and American writers, and was famous for the generosity with which he advanced the work of such major contemporaries of W.B. Yeats, Robert Frost, William Carlos Williams, Marianne Moore, H.D., James Joyce, Ernest Hemingway, and especially T.S. Eliot.
Especially T.S. Eliot. Basically, T.S. Eliot's greatest poetry is what? The Wasteland, right? Wasteland, people don't tell you, it's a cooperation with Ezra Pound. Because that impossible poetry used to be so long, right? And Ezra Pound, for our benefit, cut a lot. Right? It's almost like you are killing my baby, right? So T.S. Eliot made a baby, a monstrous big baby, and his lifeblood. right? It takes you 10 years to understand that one poetry. It takes a dumb mind of mine maybe 20 years, right? Because I'm not a fast person, I'm a slow person, but I'm steady to pursue the useless things. But there is a beauty in it. There is a real beauty and the power in that compared with these people, all these trashes. You cannot endure them after you taste the good wine, right? After you taste the good wine, the cheap ones, disgusting. But you cannot always afford good wine. So T.S. Eliot, without Pound, there's no T.S. Eliot, and they cooperate, and the Pound don't take credit. That's amazing. Now keep on going. And then I will run. I will give a run to you. Go ahead.
His own significant contributions to poetry begin with his promulgation of imagism, a movement in poetry which derived its technique from classical Chinese and Japanese poetry, stressing clarity, precision.
Therefore, sorry for the interruption. The way he translated Chinese poetry from Confucius' time or even earlier to the Tang Dynasty is not condescending. Like my professors in, I don't want to mention, they're wonderful people. They are treating the Chinese civilization as if they are talking to babies like this. Oh, grow up. You guys better grow up and we are going to help you. Make sense?
Yeah.
That kind of attitude. Actually, these are the good people. They think that way. But there's no comparison between them and Pound because they are here. Pound is there, right? He's out of the age. There is no comparison. But if some of the most educated mind in the United States, they are looking at Asian culture, especially Chinese culture, with what? Condescending. You guys are Oriental, what they called? Oriental despotism. All your art, all your poetry, you are still under the umbrella of Oriental despotism. So you guys are all slaves deep down in your soul. You guys are all slaves. So what is the beauty of Tang poetry if you are living under the Oriental despotism by these people from Germany, Karl Marx, these kind of people? I don't even want to name names of these things, okay? But the long tradition of condescending, we representing the progress, right? And the progress, we build a better weapon and technology. So you guys are so backward, but baby, you can grow up. That kind of attitude. But only in the best of the mind, the purest of mind, the mind who is destined by what? Usury and money, making money for money's sake. That he can appreciate the sheer beauty. And he was using the Chinese and Japanese culture to purify the English language, to make them better, to renew, put in some new blood, new stem cell. Okay, new stem cell. Okay, keep on going. Sorry for the ranting. Stressing what? Clarity,
precision, and economy of language.
What is called no wasting. So therefore, when he write a poetry, he gave economic definition. Not even the possibility of production. That is the processing poetic language. What is the poetry? Poetry stressing clarity. Possession, the economy of a language. Keep on going.
And forgoing traditional rhyme and meter in order to, in Pound's words, compose in the sequence of musical phrase, not in the sequence of the metronome. His later work for nearly 50 years focused on encyclopedic epic poem he entitled The Cantos.
Did I finish them all? Of course, I'm too dumb to finish them all, but I will study one and then put it into several months and do something again, and then going back to the cantos. Each one of the cantos, if you try to understand them, is you have to, like a hiking, you have to climb a mountain. You have to make the effort. But the good thing about the climbing a mountain is that the exercise, you are in Colorado, so you know. You climbing a mountain is not you conquer the mountain and share to friends. It's your muscle, your spirit getting stronger, right? But once you finish one canto, and there is one canto about Confucius talking to his students. And it's your job to find it out, right? And he was collecting all the Confucius dialogue and he's picking the ones he liked, where he have a very strong image about Confucius talking to his students. I learned so much about him, about what the nature of education, the nature of what education, improve yourself while you improve your students, right? It's a continued self-improvement. Learn from whom? Through his canto. You relearn your tradition. You relearn your heritage. Keep on going, keep on going, keep on.
Ezra Pound was born in Haley, Idaho on October 30th, 1885. He completed 2 years of college at the University of Pennsylvania and earned a degree from Hamilton College in 1905. After teaching at Wabash College for 2 years, he then traveled abroad to Spain, Italy, and London, where, as the literary executor of the scholar Ernest Fernellosa, he became interested in Japanese and Chinese poetry. He married Dorothy Shakespeare in 1914 and became the London editor of the Little Review in 1917. In 1924, he moved to Italy. During this period of voluntary exile, Pound became involved in fascist politics and did not return to the United States until 1945, when he was arrested on charges of treason for broadcasting fascist propaganda by radio to the United States during World War II.
He was putting in a cave like a monkey. He's actually putting into a cave in order to isolate his interaction with anybody else. Keep on going.
In 1946, he was acquitted, but declared mentally ill and committed to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. During his confinement, the jury of the Billingen Prize for Poetry, which included a number of the most eminent writers of the time, decided to overlook Pound's political career in the interest of recognizing his poetic achievements and awarded him the prize for the piece on cantos.
By the way, the Pisa cantos definitely including this Usura, because these the best of the mind in the United States, they all have a petition to Congress and the president, U.S. president, to give him a pardon. But they say, no pardon for this guy, but he is insane. So put him into asylum, but he make his mental hospital into a court. So he is the king. So receiving all these dignitaries, right? Like that. So that is peace and cantos. That he finished that in Italy. Keep on going. Okay. And in prison.
After continuous appeals from writers, his release from the hospital in 1958, Pound returned to Italy and settled in Venice, where he died as semi-recluse on November 1st, 1972.
He is titled The Coming of War. Wow. So the very good thing is that they have his long history.
Yeah.
After Qu Yuan is the greatest Chinese poetry. Oh, what's that? What's that? The poem? Okay. Anyway, I'm sending this one to you. And Ezra Pound. See, he's related to Robert Frost. Shame on me. I don't know anything about this lady. Okay. Hardcore, of course. T.S. Eliot. And of course, he's related with Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway's career are also promoted by this guy. Okay, Ezra Pound. So I'm ready. Okay, I will allow you go to in 5 minutes. I think I missed something. I missed something about Pound. Pound. One more. China. Confucius. Okay. Yeah, I feel, wow. When I finish this one, I allow you to go, and I want you to study this wonderful poetry, and I will restart it again. 至诚至圣. This is his canto. Each and every one of them, you conquered it, you learned it, you conquered a mountain like in Colorado.
Canto 13 by Ezra Pound. Kung walked by the dynastic temple and into the cedar grove, and then out by the lower river, and with him Qiu Chi and Tian the low-speaking. And we are unknown, said Kung. You will take up charioteering, then perhaps you will become known. Or perhaps I should take up charioteering or archery, or the practice of public speaking. And Sulu said, I would put the defenses in order.
No. You read it. This one is Confucius. Confucius talking to his students, okay? Confucius are talking to his students, reflecting about the nature of education. You read it, I will think about it. Go ahead.
This is Kung walked by the dynastic temple and into the cedar grove. And then
the cedar grove is, cedar is talking about forever, the tree that gave a lot of carving grow, an area with tree. Plato have his place, academy, right? Plato have his school. They always in a little forest, not a dense forest, not too far away from dynastic temple Lu state, one of the weakest states in the spring and autumn time. And in that kind of environment, with a national temple, with cedar grove, with river, now they are conducting what? A necessary thing called education.
And Q said,
oh, go back. Now you read.
And then out by the lower river, and with him Qiu Chi and Tian the low speaking. And we are unknown, said Kung. You will take up charioteering, then you will become known. Or perhaps I should take up charioteering or archery, or the practice of public speaking. And Silo said, I would put the defenses in order.
What you are talking about, what's the nature of education? You are unknown teacher, there's so much competitor. My teacher, why don't you make yourself more famous? If you are more famous, we are more famous. Confucius says, what should I be famous? Charity? Confucius, his dad is a warrior. He's not a weak guy. He knows shooting. He can control the chariots. His family have a warrior spirit in himself. He can teach everything. This guy have a sword, and some of his best students are warriors. Okay. And he produced diplomats, he produced generals, but he said, no sophisticated. We are teaching the all-around person. We are improving the whole person. We are not making a computer engineer whose best time are always in coding, become other people's tool, like archery. Okay, if Confucius students are the best warriors, we can, do this. That will make us famous because all the countries are preparing for war. Like Da Vinci. Da Vinci is famous at that time for making weapons, not printing, not only the printing. He's famous, the French king bring him from Italy to his country, not just building beautiful printings, but make war machines. Confucius said, oh, I can, do you want me to do that? Oh, public speaking, right? Rhetoric. And Confucius hated rhetoric. And he's very good at rhetoric. He worked as a judge before, right? A public persecutor before. He really know how to talk, but he don't like it. Because he know rhetoric go to the extreme like Plato, no, Socrates, no, are tools to make black white, white black. And he don't want to set that bad example. And he himself is example. Okay, now it's way past our time. Let me send you this Canto 13, The Nature of Education and Confucius. Think about it. The great thing about this person is he don't give condescending to the Chinese culture. And you're supposed to find this one, Virgil. They always confuse. So now is a good reminder to me to revisit his cantos. Because of his hard work, I sometimes getting slacky and divert to the things I supposed to do. Supposed to do is to enrich myself. Nothing else. That's the only reason for education. So always have a great time with you, working with you. Okay, good luck. And I hope you give me some questions. Give me a hard time. Okay, next time. Okay, bye.
Bye.